All right, let's talk about something huge. In a world with limited resources, how do we actually measure the real environmental cost of doing business? Can you really put a price on the planet? Let's dive in.
You see it everywhere, right? Companies claiming they're eco-friendly, green, sustainable. But how much of that is just good marketing? You know, greenwashing. And how much of it is real? How can we possibly know if the brands we buy from are actually helping? Or just saying all the right things?
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to tackle the big problem with all these green claims. Then, we'll look at a really cool tool for accountability. We'll even see it in action with a fascinating case study. Check if being green actually makes money, and then wrap it all up with the one big thing you need to remember.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the Green Claims Dilemma. It boils down to this really simple question that has a super complicated answer. How do you measure what a company is really doing to the environment? You know, at the very heart of this problem is this massive conflict. Our entire economic system is built on one idea: infinite growth. Make more stuff, sell more stuff, grow more, forever. But, and this is a big but, we live on a planet with very real, very finite resources. You can see the tension, right? You just can't have both forever.
So if the old way of thinking is kind of hitting a wall, what's the solution? Well, it might be that we need a totally new way to keep the books, one that actually accounts for the planet.
The whole idea here is guided by something called sustainable development. This definition is from way back in 1988, but it's more relevant than ever. It's simple. Meet our needs today, but do it in a way that doesn't mess things up for our kids and their kids down the line.
And that brings us to the main tool for the job: environmental accounting. Honestly, just think of it like adding a whole new section to a company's financial report. It's the process of counting up and reporting on the environmental pluses and minuses, right there next to the dollars and cents. Now here's the kicker. This kind of disclosure, a lot of the time, it's completely voluntary. In places like Brazil, where our case study is from, companies don't have to do this. They choose to, and when they do, it makes their real environmental performance totally visible to customers, investors, to all of us.
And this isn't just some feel-good exercise, it's smart business. This quote from 2004 really nails it. If a company just ignores its environmental costs, like pollution or fines or using up resources, then its financial reports are basically lying. They're telling a distorted, incomplete story.
Okay, so that's the theory. But let's see how this stuff actually works in the real world. We're going to take a look inside a company that the research calls Empresa N, a Brazilian firm that's right in the middle of all this.
So who is this company? Well, on paper, they're a superstar. They're known all over the world for their sustainable model. They get their raw materials straight from Brazilian forests, and they work with local communities to do it. They set big public goals on things like saving water and cutting emissions. And most importantly, they disclose all this data. They are, for all intents and purposes, a model green company. But, you know, reality is always a little messier. During this whole time, the company was in a constant legal fight with IBMA, Brazil's environmental agency. They were facing lawsuits and dozens of fines over how they access natural resources. And through it all, the company wrote in its disclosures that the chance of losing these legal battles was remote. But the conflict itself, that was very real.
And here's their side of it. Empresa N basically argued, hey, we're following the international rules. The problem isn't us, it's Brazil's own legal framework that's flawed. It just goes to show you how tricky this stuff can get, even for a company that's trying to be a leader in sustainability.
Okay, this is where that voluntary disclosure becomes so incredibly powerful. We can actually compare the company's goals from 2010 to what really happened by 2017, and the results are, well, they're eye-opening. For every single one of these key goals, they went backwards. Carbon emissions per product, up. Water consumption per unit, up. They missed their recycling targets and their goals for using Amazonian ingredients. But here's the thing. This isn't really a story about failure. It's a story about transparency. Without them publishing this data, we would have no idea what the real picture was.
So after seeing that they missed some of their big goals, you're probably asking the big question, right? The billion-dollar question. Does focusing so much on purpose and sustainability end up hurting profits? Let's check the numbers.
First up, revenue. Between 2010 and 2016, the company's gross revenue absolutely exploded. It went from 6.8 billion Brazilian reals to over 11 billion. So right off the bat, we can see their focus on sustainability definitely didn't stop them from growing like crazy.
Now, of course, as the business got bigger, it used more stuff. The value of all the inputs they bought, raw materials, water, you name it, almost doubled. I mean, you can't really grow a company this much without also growing your environmental footprint. But wait, that's not the whole story. And this chart right here, this is the real key to the whole puzzle. This shows gross value added. It's basically the wealth a company creates after you subtract the cost of the raw materials it used up. And look, that number grew a lot too. This means they were getting better and more efficient at turning those natural resources into actual economic value.
So what's the big data story here? It's pretty clear. Yeah, the company got bigger. And yeah, it used more resources. But, and this is so crucial, it also got better at creating value. It proved that you can absolutely have a business model focused on sustainability and still be incredibly profitable. The two can go hand in hand.
Okay, so we've gone through the ideas, we've looked at a real-world company. Let's wrap this all up with a big takeaway, why all of this actually matters to you.
So, what have we learned? That environmental disclosure, even when it's voluntary, is a game changer. It gives us a raw, unfiltered look behind the slick marketing. It shows us where companies are winning and where they're falling short. It keeps them honest. And most importantly, it gives us, as shoppers, as investors, as people who care, the power to make smart, informed decisions.
And that leaves us with one final big question to chew on. Remember, this was just one company, in one country, where this is mostly optional. But just imagine for a second. Imagine a world where every single company had to account for its impact on the planet, just as seriously as it accounts for its profits. What do you think would change?